You're listening to a Rock Candy podcast.
Hey, I'm Andrew.
And I'm John.
Our show, Magnified Pod, is the only podcast that discusses culture, religion, politics, and deep dives into the discographies of the bands that shaped a generation of 90s youth group kids.
We share our thoughts on the Christian bookstore alternate universe scene we grew up in, our changing religious views, and the alternative music that formed us, going through albums track by track.
We've also interviewed band members, producers, filmmakers, and artists, and had fascinating, profound, and silly conversations along the way.
Check out Magnified Pod on the Rock Candy Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the 11 Life podcast.
What's up, unicorns? Matt here. Welcome to this week's episode of 11 Life. Per usual, I'm glad that you're here. We are having an absolutely lovely and welcomed spring here at the Rock Candy Recording Studios in Asheville, North Carolina. If you are vaccinated or masking and looking for a wonderful, absolutely gorgeous time outdoors, it is hard to go wrong here. Nobody pays me to say this, and I don't have a link for you to go to for commission or anything. I feel so grateful and fortunate to live in the mountains of Western North Carolina, and I can honestly say that it has been one of the things that has kept me sane amidst the last 18 months here on planet Earth. There is just something in these mountains that feels immensely fortifying for the soul. So if you are an outdoor person, you are a hiker or a mountain biker, man, you should check this area out and hit me up on Facebook when you do, and I'll show you some cool trails. Hugs and high fives to everybody over at the 11 Life Facebook group. Love you guys. Big love and unicorn magic to everybody who is streaming our music on Spotify, who is clicking that follow button on your Spotify app. All of those little streams, plays, adding us to your playlists, those things really do help move the needle and help us continue to be able to create the content that we do here at Rock Candy. So if you are a listener of the show and you're enjoying what you're hearing, or you're enjoying content from the myriad of other Rock Candy Recordings content creators, then go give Eleventyseven a follow on Spotify. That is one of the fastest, easiest, and cheapest ways to support what we're doing here at Rock Candy Recordings. And as always, a huge thank you to everybody who's ordering anything and everything from the Rock Candy Recordings online store. Anytime that you guys purchase anything from there, you do the same thing and help us to continue to push vast amounts of unicorn chaos into the universe. Speaking of putting chaos into the universe, Rock Candy Recordings has a couple of open spots still left for this spring season here in the studio. So if you're looking to record an album, if you're looking to get a record mixed or mastered, or you're looking for any sort of help with production work, refining your sound, honing in on your sound, then hit us up on rockcandyrecordings.com. Drop us a line and let us know about your project. We absolutely love working with indie bands, helping them get amazing sounding recordings and helping them put their best foot forward in today's ever-changing music business. That sounded a little bit too corporate coming out of my mouth. I don't like that. Anyway, all that to say, if you're an artist, a singer, songwriter, we would love to be a part of the unicorn magic that you are putting out into the universe too. So let us know about it. This week, I get to sit down with the one and only Reese of the band 5 Iron Frenzy. If you were a youth group kid in the 90s or early 2000s or into the ska scene at all, you're probably already familiar with 5 Iron Frenzy, as well as the bizarre and frightening cultural impact that they've had. This week, we get to talk about Reese's brand new microphone company. That's right, he started a microphone company on Kickstarter. You get to find out all about it here on today's episode. We also get to venture deep into the cave of deconstruction of Reese's faith and how that has changed over the years, as well as these amazingly poignant social justice themes on 5 Iron's brand new record. If you haven't checked that out yet, go ahead and head over to the show notes and save it on Spotify as well, because you're not going to want to miss this. And as if that wasn't enough to talk about in the time frame, and yes, this is a long-ass episode, so go ahead and buckle up for it. Reese and his friend Joe Yerke from the band The Insiders are also doing their own podcast, a brand new podcast right here on the Rock Candy Recordings Network. It's called Pickle and Boot Shop, and it is... I don't even know how to describe this. We literally just listened to the pilot a few days ago. All I can say about it is that it will split your life into 2 parts: the time before you heard how awesome this podcast was, and then the story of how your life flew off the rails after having listened to 1 episode of it. All joking aside, I can't say enough good things about it. I hope that you really enjoy it and that you will check that out and show them some love. But for right now, we have a podcast to get to. Thank you for being here for it. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation with Reese Roper of 5 Iron Frenzy.
What's up, man?
How are you?
I'm good. How are
Great.
you doing?
Okay.
Okay, on
I'm
3.
ready.
1, 2.
Oh, I thought you meant 1, 2, 3, clap.
Well, so that's... Well, that would be on 4, right? 1, 2, 3.
Okay, are we doing on 4 or 3? I'm ready.
Let's do it on 3.
Okay.
You can handle that.
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. I'm going to set tempo. 1, 2, 3. On 3.
There was a lag. There's a lag, and I think this thing is running out of batteries because it's like boop beep. Let's try it again.
That's awesome. Okay, on 4.
Okay, on 4.
Well, let's do it. You're having a hard time with 3.
I know. Let's do 4.
All right. 1, 2, 3. All right.
We did it.
That's quite the lag. But
I know. There shouldn't be this lag. We're close. We're like within 200 miles, 300 miles.
yeah, it's true. It's true. But we're going through so
Yeah.
much crazy shit in the studio. I don't actually know.
Okay.
I don't know where everything is headed or going.
Your studio looks cool. You have a cool array of keyboards
Oh, thanks, man.
and
Yeah.
a mixing board.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped about the mixing board.
Yeah.
I bought it from this guy in town. It's like this super old console that came out of like a punk rock studio in New Mexico.
Yeah.
And it was pretty disgusting when I got it.
What made you want to go to a mixing board?
I think I had never had one in my own studio. And you know what it's like talking with Jeremy for prolonged periods of time where you just kind of like, oh, well, it's got a cool sound. It's got a cool vibe. Everything's got, So I figured that I would try it out. It wasn't super expensive. And it was something that there's a lot of documentation on the internet about. And so you can do different mods and stuff pretty easily to it. Yeah. And ever since I've had it, I'm just like, I don't know why I have all this other shit in the studio.
Really?
Because there's 16 preamps on it and they all sound cool. Like a few of them are old and crunchy and weird, but they all
Can
have.
you clean them up though?
Yeah, you can do mods and stuff to clean them up. Or if it's something gets too nasty, I'll just spray some deoxit in it and it clears up.
Yeah.
But it's kind of bonkers, but I've liked it. I'm tracking a bunch of new projects and stuff through it right now.
How does that work with Pro Tools? Like, are you using it to mix or just using it for the preamps?
I'm not using it to mix. I feel like it would probably make my mixing process a little too dirty. So, but like tracking on the way in, it kind of has this really cool indie rock kind of vibe to it. So,
Yeah, that's totally how Jeremy does it.
Yeah.
He's got that huge board and he just uses it for the preamps. And then sometimes they'll just crap out and he has to like hold electrical things together.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yeah. He's the one that actually convinced me to get that. I sent him a link to the listing of this
Yeah.
board because it was in Asheville and we literally stayed on Messenger for probably 2 days straight and he just wouldn't leave me alone about it. He's like, you need to get it. You need to get it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I did. It's fun. But speaking of studio stuff, you're like venturing into that shit as well. Like doing your own thing.
Yeah. So
We haven't been able to talk about this. Yeah.
I know. I lost my job in January and so they gave me a severance package. So I was like, cool, I've got a month. I've been working on this album forever and I'm just going to dink around with that and try and finish it. And
Yeah.
the further I get into it, the more I love this. And I realized that in 5-iron, in the first incarnation of 5-iron, I had Cubase to start out with.
Yeah.
And then went to Pro Tools. And it was more just for doing demos. I didn't have good enough equipment to try and record stuff. I would end up tracking friends' bands because they were like, oh, it's Reese and he's famous and he's got some stuff. But I didn't have good mics or anything.
Yeah.
I didn't have a good interface. I didn't have good preamps.
Yeah.
I just had, like some Shure 57s and a vague notion of how to do it. Going back, I think I had like one of those Roland 1680s.
Like the hard disk recorders?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was ridiculous. Like it was cool for making demos because you'd just be like, cool, I've got 16 tracks and I had dinked around with like 8 tracks and 4 tracks before that,
Yeah.
but it's easier and
it was easier to get just like generic effects on it so you could make your voice sound passable. And compression, like it had built-in compression. So then, I don't know. So then like over the last 20 years, I've just been accumulating this stuff. And because I've been a functional adult and working, I've gotten better gear. And so now I've got like this modded Black Lion Audio Mackie interface, and I've got like an Avalon compressor and preamp and some really decent mics and all this stuff. So I'm really enjoying this.
So you've made it. This is what the top looks like, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I think I'm in the middle.
I got a Sweetwater credit card. We made it.
I know, man. I am so tempted every day to just be like, I have 2 years to pay this off. Why don't I just...
It's 50 cents a day.
That's right. It's less than a cup of coffee. So
either kids can have clean water or I can have a compressor. And when you put it that way, it's a no-brainer.
No-brainer.
No boner.
So I totally, I've been working on it, and I love it. I love it so much. I love just sitting and dinking around, and I've been listening to your podcast a ton, especially where you take apart your songs and you'll play the individual tracks and you'll talk about effects you put on different things, because I've always admired your production and your recording. I think some of the stuff you do is crazy. Like you were talking about one song and you had on the verse, you had 6 layers of vocals, which just mind boggling. I can't believe you have that much patience, but it sounds great.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, I feel like I'm constantly kind of in this phase of like, I'll get super focused on something that I'm doing in the studio and I'll hear the sound in my head and I'm like, well, this is how I'm going to have to get it. It's very time intensive. It's very soul sucking work to try to get it that way. And then when it's done, you're like, well, that's kind of cool. I'm happy with that. But then you're also like, was it really worth it? I mean, was all of that really worth it? I mean, this is just my own neuroses. I'm not trying to project it onto you or not. But yeah, I'm constantly going back and forth between, what's the most rewarding thing, the most rewarding part about it? Is it the journey or the destination? And I don't know. The older that I get, the more I'm like, is it really necessary? But yeah.
Do you still enjoy it though, making music?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, it's not like that at all. I think I just have to be in a certain headspace. It's not the kind of thing where, because like I'm married, and I have a life and we have family and so many different things going on. And it's not like it was, 10, 12 years ago when like the only thing I had to do was just to hole up in a studio and become neurotic. And like, that was all I had to do with my life. I think things just change over time, like priorities change over time. It doesn't mean that I like enjoy the process less. I think it just means there are other things competing for that time or that emotional space. Do you have any of that kind of, is that resonating? Totally. Okay.
Yeah, I've got 2 kids. For me, I haven't been able to be, every time I've had to write songs or be in the studio, I've had to shift out of my regular job, which is being a nurse or being like the director of a nursing home. Mm-hmm. And it's all consuming. So I would sometimes take notes while I was driving. I'd listen to music or I'd listen to a mix I made and be like, oh, do this. But then I'd get in my studio and it would take a couple hours for me to just hit that stride where I'm like, oh yeah, this is how I do this.
Yep.
Oh yeah, this track needs compression or this is, like this is not in the same key.
Yep.
It would take a while, especially like just doing that. But I have 2 kids too, and that kind of slows you down too, because you don't want to be like, get out of here because I'm trying to think of what is in G minor, So you just like shift between those 2 things. But I think like in the past month or so, I've been able to get better at it and kind of go back into that groove. And then it's not so hard to shift between doing that and going downstairs and making lunch for the kids. And or usually it's yelling at them for playing with sticks. because there's like these 4 neighborhood kids that come down, and I swear every time I look out the window, one of them is like about to club the other one with a stick. So
there's always those kids in the neighborhood. Always those kids.
Well, and sometimes it's my kids. They have very violent tendencies. Pretty worried about it.
They just go straight from like binging Game of Thrones to playing with the other neighborhood kids.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how fucked up that probably would be.
Hey, you're 10, right? You're 10. You can watch this. When they're having butt sex, don't do that with your sister.
Oh my God. If I had a nickel for every time somebody told me that. But you were talking about, I'm sorry. I'm going ahead and assuming that we're going to get derailed multiple times, and I'm here for it. As long as you are.
Great. Yeah.
So yeah, all that's super important. I want us to come back to that, emotional journey of growth and whatever later. But before we get too far away from it, I'm assuming that you're talking about this new kind of project that you have with like the microphones and stuff. Like you and I haven't talked about this at all. And it's like this big thing that you have happening on the internet right now that I'm assuming like you just, because of your job situation, you were like, I'm going to just try this thing out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, so like 4 years ago, I started trying to get really good microphones. And, I think anybody in a studio is like, either I'm going to buy this AKG for $300 or I'll do some research and I'll find some company that's making decent mics for cheap.
Something comparable, yeah.
Yeah, or I got to pull out that Sweetwater credit card and get like a $5,000 mic.
Right.
I have this huge problem where I cannot track my own vocals. Like I can't hear the pitch, or I'll mess up my rhythm. I get really nervous, and then
if you were in the position of being your own producer or engineer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, or just like making demos for 5-iron. I can't do it very well.
Yeah.
And so I got in this total I was just obsessed with trying to correct everything I could so I wasn't sounding bad, so that I could just focus on I'm going to sing better. And so I started researching. There's all these really good German microphone companies that cost like $5,000 to $15,000, but they've been farming all their work out to China.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm going to find out if I can get who's making these knockoffs, because the Chinese don't respect patent law at all.
Right.
So I bought a couple of these microphones that were like Neumann knockoffs. And we're like, these sound great. They sound awesome. I took some down to Jeremy, and we ended up recording the 5-iron album on one of them. And looking at that, you kind of figure out that the schematics are out in the open for these really good mics, and these companies will help you make circuit boards. And if you like some of the people had modded them with different diaphragms and new capacitors and stuff. And I was like, I'm gonna try this, because you can buy like the outside pretty easily. These companies just manufacture them, and then just through trial and error, I was like, for some reason, in my high school, you had to take a shop class, and I took electronics because I was in physics with a bunch of nerds, and I was like, I want to hang out with my nerd friends. Took electronics, learned how to solder, and then kind of applied this. Bought a bunch of pieces and sent some schematics to these companies and had them made, and then finally came up with what I thought was just kick-ass mic. And then, I had this idea of getting it powder coated so it looked cool, because you don't see very many white microphones. So I was like, I'm going to powder coat this in white. So it's like a ceramic coating, which makes it stronger.
Yeah.
And it sounds dope. So Kickstarter. And then this morning at like 4:30 in the morning, it finally reached the goal. It's got like 9 days left. Thanks, man. I was sweating it. I was just like, well, that was a good dream, but I don't think it's gonna pan out. So this morning it became real. So now I'm going to start ordering all the parts and then start assembling them. But
okay, so
pretty exciting.
So let's just Shark Tank this for a second, okay?
Okay.
So you're going to be like putting together the mics yourself?
Yeah, and I have a couple friends.
Okay, so you have nerd friends who are going to help you put these things together, and these are guys that live close to you?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. So in terms of like putting them together, is this like... I don't actually know how this is going to come out, but is this something that like you feel like anybody could do, is kind of put these together, or does it really require a specific level of expertise that between you and your friends putting them together, that you kind of have the ability to kind of quality control amongst yourselves?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think anybody that can solder could do this on their own, but it wasn't like there's just a kit that we could buy.
Right.
It was, like looking at the schematics for the Neumann U87 and the U67 and a couple other mics, and just trying to figure out, reading through stuff, figuring out how people have modded the knockoffs and getting better diaphragms, better capacitors.
Yeah.
And so we made something that I feel is unique, even though it's not, I can't say it's like made in America. It's assembled here.
Right.
And right now we have one completely made prototype, but the rest, the everything else is, I think, easy at this point. We just have to get all the parts and then assemble them. So anybody could do that if they knew how to solder. But then I think this thing is unique in that we figured out what parts work the best.
Yeah.
Some other stuff.
Okay, so Reese, this is what I don't understand is like literally we just talked about this for maybe 3-4 minutes, and like none of this information, which I feel like is really important to understanding like this product and the quality of the product, like none of this information gets brought up in your Kickstarter video. Like at all.
It's like about robots.
Right. It's so fucked up and weird. And I'm just like, if somebody had sat down and had a conversation where like, we compared some components and like we're cross-referencing some schematics and, we've just figured out a way to make this thing that is better than the sum of its parts. And we've taken all the legwork out of it, and you're going to get something comparable to, the kind of price point that you would be buying a microphone from Sweetwater for.
Right.
Like that feels like more of a dry, sciencey adult pitch to me. Why did you leave all of that out?
It just seemed boring to me. So I made like 3 videos, and they were more and more boring. And then I was like, I'm gonna take a bunch of stock footage and make a funny video about the future. And then I did.
I feel like for the next one, because hopefully this is like super successful and you're able to do it again. I think we should take some very specific like scenes from famous films and just overdub them to be like the pitch for the product, or somehow write the product into the scene. And just
as long as Dirty Dancing is one of them.
Oh, yeah. We can do Dirty Dancing, Indiana Jones. I mean, we just do a really shitty Photoshop job of putting a microphone like where the crystal skull would be.
Yeah.
Okay. But next time.
Well, so my next thing is I have the Kickstarter thing, so I'll be able to manufacture a bunch. I was trying to get enough through that we can manufacture double of what the people ordered.
Okay.
So I'll have a bunch that I want to send out to people.
Right.
To get, to get reviews, and then hopefully get it like in some trade magazines. I don't know how else to do this, but that was my idea.
I think that the editors at Sound on Sound are going to see your Kickstarter video and be floored.
Yeah. They'll be like, damn.
He's got this shit figured out.
I think this article has written itself. No. I lost my other headphone. I got these skull candy like in-ear things that are at Costco, and I hate them. They sound good, but they do not stay in my ears.
Are you trying to fit in at the skate park?
Yeah.
Ordering skull candy, anything?
Yeah. Dude, so it's nice out and it's spring break, and I got my daughter, she wanted this for her birthday, but a cool skateboard. Like it's legit. And then I have my old skateboard, and I was like, let's go. It's real nice. And then my 6-year-old, she brought her little scooter because she's not ready to hurt herself. So I was skating, and by far I was the oldest dude there. I don't have skate shoes. I had Doc Martens that I wear all the time. And then I'm like trying to ollie with them, and they're like coming up and giving me advice. They're like, you gotta kick it harder. You gotta, come on, old man.
You gotta quit being such a dipshit. That'll help.
Quit being old.
That's the thing. If you have insurance, you're probably too old to be at a skate park.
It's true. It's true.
We have this really nice skate park here in this town next to us called Waynesville, and it was built by the Tony Hawk Foundation. So
oh my gosh,
they spent millions of dollars on this thing, and it is the sickest shit that I've ever seen or that I've ever been able to skate on, like, in person. So Davey and I will get out there like every few months, and Davey's actually really he's pretty good. Like, he can hang with the other skaters, and he's kind of short and looks perpetually young. So he sort of fits in. Or people are like, hey, man, you got any weed? Like, he's that kind of vibe there, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm just like this weird kind of lumbering guy, sort of like putt-putting, you know, like...
You look young still, man.
I've
You're
got
fine.
training wheels on my skateboard.
Nah.
But yeah, it's fun. It's just super high risk, high reward.
It hurts so bad to fall.
Yeah.
Like, remember when you were a teenager and you fell and you were like, oh, that sucks. And then you're like, I got to get back up. And now you're just like,
I got to stay down here.
I'm just going to lay here and hope my bones settle. Hope they go back into place.
You take one fall in a skateboard now, like past 30, and you're like, if I lay here, if I just lay here. Oh, man. Yeah, I love that. Good stuff. Good
Love
stuff.
it. So good being old.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Dude, Tony Hawk just turned 52. And he did, like, he had, like, some other skateboarder, some other pro skateboarder, like Peralta, film him do a 540. He was like, I'm going to do one last one. I'm too old. It hurts too bad when I land. But I was just like, bro, that's so cool that he's doing that. Because when I fall, I don't feel right for weeks. Yeah.
Well, it's like cool that he can do that, because it's like, what are you and I going to do at the end of our careers? Like, I'm going to strum my last G minor and people are going to lose their shit.
Yeah.
No G minor sounds the same.
Dude, I saw him, like, it was right before he died. It was Glenn Campbell, and he was going out full on Alzheimer's dementia. He'd go out with his kids. And they'd have to, like, be like, Dad, we're playing a show. Come on out on stage. Hand him his guitar, somebody else tuning it. But then, hey, Dad, let's play this song. And then he just play it.
Yeah.
You know, because that was like
muscle memory.
That and, you know, like the part of your brain that stores song is one of the last to go. And so he just kept doing it. That's cool.
That's the secret to fighting Alzheimer's and dementia, is have your whole life be a song. Musicals have been telling us this shit for years, and nobody's waking up.
We don't listen to Zac Efron and make a High School Musical.
Zac Efron sounds like something I would order at an Asian restaurant.
Excuse me, do you have any Zac Efron?
We keep some special in the back. That's it.
Do you remember in Wayne's World when he asked for cream of some young guy? I say that my wife hates that, and I say it all the time just to make her mad. But we go to it's pretty. It's one of those things that was okay in the 90s, but is borderline racist now.
Right.
But it's okay to mess with my wife. She loves it.
You heard it, Internet. It's okay to mess with Reese's wife.
Ask her for some cream of some young guy.
Somebody's going to jail. Yeah. So, okay. So all of that's super cool. We haven't, aside from maybe like a voicemail that I left you or a couple of random little text threads, we haven't really talked about your new record at all.
Okay.
So I've talked to Scott at some length about it and kind of gotten his take on it. And as Jeremy was working on it, sometimes I would be able to hear, a clip here or there or something that he was working on. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on it now, like in the moment. It's been out for a while. What, 2 months?
Yeah.
3 months now?
Yeah. Came out like the January 15th, maybe.
Yeah.
Did it? Yeah.
Yeah.
13th? 15th? I don't remember. It was something.
But Reese,
January
it's I think it's probably one of the coolest things I've ever heard Five Iron do. And I don't mean that in terms of like, like records, consistently throughout the years, they'll grow. The band will grow as recording practice grows, as technology grows. The stuff that you put out now, even if you were making it on an inbox, would sound totally different than stuff that Five Iron was doing on a hard disk recorder in the 90s.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I think in terms of like musicality and in the lyricisms and the ideas, the song concepts that are sort of permeating everything about your new record, I found it very fascinating. I would just love to hear like what your headspace is in it now and maybe like walk me through your writing process for a lot of this. It might be too much to get into in one show.
No, thanks for saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I don't know. It's so hard to have feelings about this album because there's no real validation for it. I live in this small town in Virginia. Nobody knows me. My family doesn't really care. And, like we're in COVID, so we haven't played shows. I haven't seen the guys in the band for, a year and 3 months.
Yeah.
I didn't even see them when we were making the album. I went to Jeremy on my own twice, and then they recorded at Scott's. So it's the most surreal thing. I feel like personally we made the best album we've ever made, but there's no frame of reference for that. There's no playing shows and people are like really into the new songs or.
Well, it sounds like you have an emotional, you have an emotional sort of bar for that. You emotionally feel like it's the best thing that you've ever done. Am I right in saying that? Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm fairly insecure, and so it's hard to kind of match that with reality. For me, I felt like we were writing this album. It took us 7 or 8 years, and it had to go through like 10 incarnations of us figuring out how to write again. Mm-hmm. We did okay on Engine of a Million Plots, but then I think Scott and I figured out, we were like, well, this didn't work.
Right.
Let's try it this way. And instead of kind of building off of what we had done then, we ended up just basically throwing out everything and then restarting how we wrote stuff. And we ended up like in the last 2 years getting to a point where we got tired of being this democracy that Five Iron always is, where we have to show everything to everybody and vote on everything, which was fine when we practiced together.
Right.
But now we don't. So it would just take months to get to a decision and you'd lose all your impetus for it. So Scott and I kind of became the primary songwriters, and then Dennis started acting as a kind of a producer. He'd chime in about once every 2 weeks to a month and say, I don't like this or fix this. And then Scott and I just went back and forth, and when we liked it, we would pitch it to the band. Yeah. And I think he and I, we both went through some periods where we were really angry at each other. We were really upset and having trouble working. And then just got to a point where we realized that we love each other and we're really good friends. And we just started making concessions and trying to figure out how to write better. So for me, I guess like the reality of that was that for the last 7 or 8 years, I've been trying to turn out these lyrics, and they're pretty political and pretty angry. And I felt like a lot of the band and like my mom, other people I knew would just push back, say that's not what I want to hear. I need, I need something positive and upbeat. And you guys, you wrote the Flowery Song, and this is
but are you playing shit for your mom on the reg? Like, how often are you sending your mom a demo?
I know. No, she'll ask about it. She'll be like, well, how's Five Iron? What are you writing about? Are you writing about Jesus? And and honestly, I have to be like, sometimes, Mom, but right now I don't feel like it. I'm fairly angry. I need to do this. And I got to a point about 2 years ago where I just was done listening to what people were telling me to write about, and just said, hey, I'm doing this. This is it. Like, this stuff needs to be said. And if I don't, I'm being dishonest. So I'm just going to write a bunch of political shit and really heavy emotional things and get it out. And then hopefully I can write something happy. And it ended up that it was just this. Finally, the guys in the band just kind of came around. We're like, this is cool. This is what needs to be said, and we're behind you. So it took a while.
I think even beyond what is just being said or what your choice of words are, which I do feel like is important, and I do feel like adds to what I consider to be the coolness or greatness or thickness of this record in particular. But I also think that something happens to the energy around people. Something happens between us whenever something honest is being said. Even if it's something that you don't agree with, if it's coming from a genuine place in somebody, you pick up on that. I mean, like, people pick up on that. I just so happen to find myself like in agreement with a lot of the stances I feel like you were taking on the record. So of course, because that strokes my belief about the world around me, like I feel connected to it in that way. But I have to imagine in a band with so many people and so many voices that maybe that became complicated. At some point. Yeah. I mean, getting everybody on board with one person's singular kind of lyrical vision for that, it sounds impossible.
Yeah. It's crazy. I think the good thing is most people in the band will not say anything about lyrics unless it really bothers them.
Okay.
And for me, I'm cool with that. I don't want to say something that people in the band are ashamed of.
Yeah.
They're my friends, and so I try and come at things from a slant that we can all get behind, that we all philosophically believe this, or we all feel this same way.
Yeah.
So I try to do that anyway when I write. And now I think because two of the guys in Five Iron are agnostic, it ends up being that slant that we can all get the same footing on is social justice issues. Which is good, because that I feel is where I think Christianity has slipped, and it needs to be said.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We did when 15 years ago when we were writing, I don't know how many years ago it was, when we were writing Five Iron Frenzy 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah.
There had been enough things voiced where people were upset with lyrics or just felt like they were dumb or they wanted to talk about them. Then I was like, look, let's just sit down and we'll workshop this. We can just sit and I'll read through all the lyrics. I'll tell you everything. Cause we had, I did have a small Pro Tools rig and I could demo stuff.
Yeah.
So we had demos of songs and we could sit down and talk about what was going on to the album. And it was better. It was good just because either you got confirmation that people in the band were okay with what was saying, or they were excited about what was being said, or they would say, I don't like this word. This word bothers me. The meter on it, or just it feels clunky. And then it's easy thing to change. And I think for me, it made me grow as a songwriter and as a lyricist to have to make those small adjustments. And nobody was just like, this whole song sucks, redo it. So it was more just small tweaks. But I think in these last two albums, the guys in the band that are really into the lyrics, they wanted to have that, and there's just no space for it. We don't live together. We don't live in, I live in 3 time zones away. I can't.
Yeah.
hardly ever sit with them and be like, these are the lyrics. What do you think?
Right.
I hardly have time to write the lyrics as it is, because my plate was full. You know, I just couldn't make it happen.
See, this is what's so weird to me. It's something that I don't know if we've ever talked about before. But like whenever I'm writing stuff for Eleventy, it very rarely ever comes out really quickly. I might get an idea for a chorus really quickly, but I'll spend weeks like downstairs on a single song, just waking up every day, coming down here, trying to get myself into a headspace, thinking about what I want to say, maybe writing 5 or 6 songs in and of themselves, and then trying to pull, and collage my way into something that I feel like is compelling or that I'm interested in. And there are times where if it's just my job to be in a room with somebody and help them with lyrics, all of that comes a little faster. Like, oh, we could rephrase this, or we can take this idea and change it. But I don't understand. I think I don't know what goes on in somebody's mind who can just, out of not having the time to do it, just all of a sudden kind of forces all of these ideas to the top of themselves in the way that you do. I don't know anybody else that does that in quite the way that you do it. Is this something where you feel like you're like throughout the day, you're kind of writing in your head? Like you're kind of... Yeah.
So you have like a really dreamlike perception of how I do this.
Okay.
It's the same. It is like the same thing, just getting stuck on one verse or whatever, and you're just going over and over, and I think the only way to do it is just find ways to get out of your head.
Yeah.
So whether that is I go and I just make a new file of the song and throw out everything I've recorded, or strip out all the instruments, so it's just all I hear is the bass line and the drums, and try and come up with that. Or I record background vocals and then I throw out the mains and I'm like, do something with that.
Okay.
Just tricks like that. But it doesn't come easy. I just think kind of keeping it in your head all the time. I always have a file going of ideas for songs, and usually it's catchphrases or something funny I read, or words that I think are really magnificent, or just a rhyme scheme that would go well together.
Yeah.
And then I just have this list, and maybe 3% of that makes it into a song, but it keeps me thinking about it. And it's easier to go to that for ideas than it is to just pull it out of thin air.
Yeah. I think with this album in particular, it seems like it's immensely heavy shit to have in your head for prolonged periods of time. There's like a lot of anger. There's a lot of like social justice things being addressed. And there's like a lot of fire behind it. And it kind of makes me wonder, like, what does that look like for you, boots on the ground? Like emotionally, has like, the last 18 months or the time leading up to the recording of this record? And what did that look like for you emotionally? And do you feel like you were carrying the heat of that in yourself going into the record?
Yeah. I don't know. I used to have in 5-iron, there would be 5-iron, and then I had Brave St. Saturn.
Yeah.
So I had this kind of darker emotional outlet in Brave St. Saturn. And that was the whole reason I did it. I didn't really aspire to make albums on it, and we kind of just did it because I think Frank was like, "Yeah, let's try this." Yeah. Frank Tate, the guy that owned 5 Minute Walk. But I don't have that anymore. I have it just seems like there's nothing but just kind of this angst of like the zeitgeist of our times. Just everything is dark. We're in a plague. I think politically, everything is so charged. I hate going to the store now because I go into the store with my mask on, and there's the people that work there and they have to wear the masks, or they have to be in front of people who may have COVID. And then there's just people just making a political statement. Like every third person is taking their mask off as soon as they get through the door to be like, I'm not going to be controlled by this. But then, like, what? You can't wear this thing around your ears to help that person, or at least help that person's perception of you?
This is what I don't understand about all of that stuff is like, you're exactly right. You run into this situation where people are like, well, in the name of liberty or freedom or nobody's going to control me, that I'm going to do this. And then I find it so funny because I feel like what they're actually being controlled by is their ego. It's like you're on this ego trip. You're actually a slave to this idea that like I cannot be influenced by anything else, or somehow I lose my value or my worth or my intelligence as a human being. And that's not the same thing. It's like, we're in a fucking pandemic. It's okay. Put a mask on. We're just trying to help. Like, we're trying to be here for each other. Like,
yes,
it's so weird.
Even if the pandemic is fake and there's, like the vaccine is fake and they're putting microchips in you and all this stuff, that person that works there has to be in front of you. And their perception is they're in danger to serve you.
Yep.
Like that person at the restaurant or that person at Lowe's, they're doing that because they have to do it to put food on their table. And you cannot wear a mask to even if you think it's false, you can't have this thing around your ears to make that person not fear you. Like that. So I go in the store and I get furious. And I'm like, every single time I go, I want to just say, dude, do you think you're better than us? Like, is this why you took your mask off? Are you better than everybody else? What about this person that has to check you out? And then I know as soon as I say it, I'm going to have to get in a fight. And so all of this like anxiety and just hepped up on testosterone or whatever I have going on is triggered like the whole time I'm at the grocery store, and I come home having just like shaking. Like I'm so hepped up on adrenaline. Like, am I going to have to fight this dude? Should I say something? Because if I say something, I'm going to fight.
Right.
I'm going to have to fight this dude. And that's not me, but I feel so strongly about it. Like I feel like it's such a injustice that I want to, and in my head I'm just going through this thing for the 15 minutes or 30 minutes I can make it in the store. These are trying times, Matt.
Trying times at the Walgreens. Yeah, so it seems like you funneled a lot of that angst into a lot of the lyrics for the new record. And you were kind of going through that and talking through some of the, are there specific songs on the record that you feel like were a very distinct, satiating kind of fire hydrant of emotion for you that you kind of still go back and reference? You're like, I'm really glad that it came out that way. Or I'm really glad that these words came out this way. This energy was translated in a specific way.
I think While Supplies Last, for sure. That song is just straight angst. It's just me being super angry about not the political climate. It's about the church and just how the church is, I don't know, like just literally in bed with the devil. I cannot believe that this beacon of Christ's love has fallen so far, and so again, like I have all this anger and I was like, I want this to come across as not me just being angry and throwing out all these political things, but you can't avoid talking about politics when you're talking about the church these days. And I wanted to put light on that. I wanted to say, you've made these two things inseparable, and what you're doing is wrong. It's counter to the gospel and to the character of Christ. So it's super angry. And I love how it came out, and I'm screaming at the end of it. And the only thing I don't like is the demo version I did was tougher even. Like I screamed better than I did in the studio. I was still trying to save some of my voice, I think, to sing later. So the demo version was just like all of my anger coming out.
And now the world will never know just how angry you could get.
Yeah, they'll never know. Thank God.
Yeah, I've always find this interesting because I feel like before your record came out, we put out a record that was, I feel like, exploring a lot of these kinds of themes, but very much more from like a personal and maybe emotional kind of level, not as like socio-political maybe as you guys got on this newest 5-Iron record. But yeah, I felt a certain kind of catharsis, like with a lot of the things that you had to say. But it does beg the question, like you have made this complete 180, it seems like. And I'll be interested to hear like what your take on this is for your life as a whole, your career as a whole. But you kind of go from being this like piece of iconography within youth group culture with very blatantly like Christian themes and worship music at times and these worshipful experiences like at your concerts in like the 90s and 2000s. And how do you juxtapose or compare and contrast Reese now with Reese then?
I feel like early on, even on our first album, especially me, I had this heavy conviction to just be honest. So, our first album starts out with The Old West, and it's a song about just exploitation or the abuse of indigenous people.
Right.
It's a good start for 5-Iron because it almost got us not kicked off the record label, but they were like, this should not go on the album. But 5 Minute Walk was cool. They would be like, it's your decision.
Yeah. They
never put making a profit above what they felt was
artistic integrity.
And so we said, hey, let's do it. Let's put it out, put it on there and just see what happens. And it didn't get pulled from the shelves. We did have far more worshipful music. And I think our shows were totally different because we would often end with worship songs at the time. I think some of the people in the band would be okay with going back to that. Personally, I don't feel that would be honest.
Right.
And for me, writing, what I had said earlier, where I am trying to write something that the other guys in the band can get behind, it usually centers around social justice. So I don't feel like I'm saying things that are not biblical, but I'm staying away from things that I think would make them feel uncomfortable. And the other side of that is it makes me uncomfortable because I feel that so much of that culture was just used by youth groups and churches to try and justify what they were doing. And so you had to provide a Christian experience at your show, or you may not come back to that church, or you may, or like you're not going to play for that promoter anymore.
Right.
Or even just people would talk about it. Are they still Christian?
Yeah.
That bothers me because like, I don't think we ever loved playing churches or playing Christian shows. That was kind of a second thing that we did. It was edifying and it definitely paid the bills better than playing general market shows.
Right.
But I don't like having my faith questioned because I don't say Jesus enough, or because we didn't do worship songs at the end, because I'm trying to do the right thing, or I'm trying to be honest, or I'm trying to listen to God for guidance. It bothered me, and it ate at me the whole time we were broken up. I just told everybody, I'm not doing this again unless all of us are told by God on stage we're going to sing some worship songs or whatever. And that includes Andy and Scott. And I told God that. I don't...
God's not going to talk to them.
He might. I mean, if God is real, there's no reason why he couldn't.
Right.
And I'm not... I'm not going to get in the way of that if he does, but I'm also not going to manufacture something to prop up somebody's faith.
Do you feel like there was a time where you did?
Yes, several times.
Okay.
I feel like I gave in to that feeling, and that's what I don't like. And I don't know. I think most of evangelical Christianity has gone through either just this complete pull to the right or a pull to the left where everything is being deconstructed. Everything is being pulled apart. Sorry, I'm losing my voice here. Nut allergies, got to cut that out. Sorry, Dante. Yeah, but I mean, like, so my personal deconstruction is I cannot not believe in Jesus Christ and the Bible and the gospel because of something supernatural that happened to me. I can't erase that.
Is that something
from
that
my
you want to
head.
talk about? Is it too much to ask for that story?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. It's crazy. So when I was 15 or 16, I think I was 15, I'd been a Christian for about 2 years. I woke up on a Saturday. I got up, brushed my teeth, went to the bathroom, didn't know what to do, went back in my room, lay down on my bed and was just thinking about, like, should I get up? Should I go eat? Try and go back to sleep? What should I do? I'm positive I was awake because, you know, like, I don't have narcolepsy. I can't fall asleep like the second I fall down and it, you know, it was 8 a.m. or whatever. So I felt this pressure on my chest and I was looking up at the ceiling and I was like, this is weird. Did a cat jump up on me? So I went to move to be like, hi, kitty. And as I went to move, I realized, you know, the pressure was more than a cat. And as I realized this, I heard voices. I heard a couple talking to each other at first. It seemed like some language that I couldn't put my finger on, you know, like if someone's speaking French, you're like, oh yeah, that's French. I don't know French, but I know what it sounds like.
Or Klingon,
I know what Spanish sounds like. Klingon, same thing. So this was something, it was voices. It sounded like human voices, but it was in a language I couldn't be like, I know that language. And as this happened, the pressure got more and I couldn't move my body. And so I'm processing this as it's happening. And it probably all lasted like maybe 15 to 30 seconds. But it just kept growing. And as the pressure kept growing, I kept hearing more and more voices talking to each other. It was like I was like listening in on conversations, not like they were talking to me.
Yeah.
And it just kept growing to the point where I thought I was going to die, that I couldn't breathe and I couldn't move. And it was so loud. It was like being in a small arena, like in a hockey arena or something. My mind was just racing. Like, what do I do? What do I say? And out of all of these voices, I hear just the most wicked voice I've ever heard just cut through them all. And it goes, who are you? The thought popped in my head. I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ. And I felt the weight just pull off of me. And all the voices just like it got sucked up. It was just like gone. And I could move. And I got up and I could breathe. And I ran into my sister's room and I said, did you hear that? Did you hear anything? And she was asleep still.
Yeah.
You know, so like I woke her up and nobody else in the house heard anything. And couple years later, being in youth group, I had spent like those 2 years being like, that's crazy. I think demons attacked me. I was saved. Why didn't I say something cooler? You know, like, why didn't I say,
I love that
I'm
that's
Reese
your
Roper,
thought.
or-
You have this like supernatural experience. You're like, why couldn't I be cooler in that?
no, for years. But then I get to, like we're doing some Bible study and you're going through like the disciples casting out demons and they say, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ. Be silent. And I was like, that is what was in my head.
Yeah.
And the word rebuke wasn't in my vocabulary.
Right.
So for me, this is why I believe, because I'm not, you know, like I'm not narcoleptic. I'm not schizophrenic. It wasn't carbon monoxide poisoning. That word was not in my vocabulary, and somehow it popped into my head, and it was the exact same thing that I needed to say. I believe that really happened, and I was saved, that there was something evil that tried to kill me, and then I was saved by Jesus. So as much as I tear apart my Christianity, that is still there, and I can't ignore it. As much as I've wanted to, you know, as much as I wanted to in high school and like have sex with girls and do all the things that I felt like I wasn't allowed to do as a Christian. Yeah, I could not. And
well, you couldn't have if you wanted to, because everybody knows that Jesus takes away any sort of boner that isn't righteous. Well, not
sweatpants Therefore, running in sweatpants is from the Lord.
I think the devil created sweatpants to test our faith, to test our sexual purity and resolve.
Yeah.
I've never heard that story. I really appreciate you sharing that, Reese. That's
thanks, man.
Yeah.
I don't tell it very often.
It sounds like a really intense thing to go through at such a young age and to try to make sense of. Is it something that's like very clearly still impacting you and affecting the way that you view reality today?
Yeah. Yeah, because so much of the time I don't want to believe. I don't want it. It's burdensome. It's burdensome, and there's like a huge stigma that goes with being a Christian these days. And I don't want it. I don't want the implication of believing either. I don't want to pursue righteousness. I don't want to be a disciplined person all the time. That burden is there. And I don't know. I think that's where my deconstructionism is just like, what am I doing because I feel like I'm obligated to versus what am I doing out of love for God? And I think that is the test, because I think if you just do something out of obligation, it's dogma, and you're going to fail and you're going to feel like a failure. But if you do something out of love, you can't fail. I don't know. That's the measure of that. And I think also just with me kind of tearing apart what I believe, I really struggle with the idea of church and pastors now. Like I have great friends. They're pastors. They're really good people. They're good at it. But I think the idea,
but they're all just a bag of dicks. You don't really care.
They're all a bag of dicks. I love them so much, but fuck them all. Right? They for real. I mean, knowing them, they're good people that I'm friends with, but they're not perfect. And I think that we've generated this idea that you have to go to this building to experience God or to learn about God or to get to worship God, or you have to sing to worship God and you have to do it with this group and this band or a choir.
Right.
And then there's this person that has every spiritual gift and we pay them money to lead us about God. And I just think that's bullshit. And it sets us up to be disappointed, and it sets those people up to fail and to disappoint us and to, to question what they believe. Yeah. It's stupid. I don't know. I don't want to go to church anymore. I'm not saying like fellowship is bad. It's awesome to talk to people about what you believe, and it's awesome to worship, what you know of God. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel like you're meant to do that. And I don't want to talk anybody else out of that. And if church is the thing for you and it makes you feel great, do it. But I'm going to tell you that you're going to get to a point where you're going to be like, I hate this church, or this guy is wrong now. And you're going to be like, I'm going to go to another church, and you might find it for a while. But the problem is I just think that's not it. Like that's just not how we are supposed to experience God.
Yeah.
It's a way to, but I don't think it's the answer. That got really heavy, man.
Well, I guess I'll see you in hell, Reese. I mean, if you can't get on board, if you can't get on board with what's happening in the church right now, and it all feels like bullshit to you, then you can burn in hell.
I prefer to burn in heck. I'm excited about heck.
The best parties are here in heck. Download the Heck app now. Yeah.
Hook up with sweet singles in your area.
Oh my God. I can only imagine what that journey has been for you, and I really, really appreciate you giving us a little bit of like a glimpse into what that looks like for you. It sounds like it sounds like you definitely you identify as Christian or as a part of the Christian belief. Maybe not necessarily with like Protestant evangelicalism, but with Christianity as a whole, or these more like universal principles of Christianity. I
think that's fair. I think that most of what I believed has become super liberalized. They just, when you're a young Christian, you think you know all the answers, and I feel like I don't know very much except love. Like I know that when I love people, if I choose that it is the right thing. It feels right. It makes me happy. Versus like when I choose distancing myself from people because I don't believe the same thing, or because I believe that what they do with their life is gross, or I feel like it's a sin. I don't know what a sin is anymore. I don't, I feel like really if I can just figure that out for me, that's enough. I can't even figure that out for me. I'm working on it, but I know that if my response to other people is to love them in all things, that it works, and it makes me feel closer to God. I think that's a beautiful sentiment, Reese. Yeah. I mean, I love, so, I'm binging your podcast. I love listening to your podcast. I think you're so good at it. I love at the end how you break it down and you talk to people about love and if they've ever been in love, and just trying to get a gauge on where they are spiritually. It's really cool to hear people talk about that. Well, thank you for it. Well, it sounds like you've listened to it enough where you knew all of my prompts before I would give them to you. I'm in 2018 right now. I still got 2.5 years to go. There you go. That's awesome. Well, I feel like I could do this with you for forever, and I have so many different questions that maybe we can get to later on in our lifetime, or we'll just have you back on the show again. But I know that we're going the time, and I try to be respectful of people's time in the car with their kids when they're listening to the show, and not make it too much of a thing for them to bite off. But I really would love to take a second and just like talk about your new show with Joe. Sure. Because you guys are going to be launching, I don't know when this podcast is going to come out, but your show is supposed to come out at the end of the week on April 1st. And it may or may not be a real show. It may or may not be a joke. I guess we'll figure that out. It's real. Have you heard it? I mean, it's not good, but it's real. It exists. That's it. It's fast food. Yeah. All right. So the origin of that. Yeah. Well, so Joe Yerke is the singer of the Insiders. He and I met in 1996. There was one signed Christian ska band. It was the Supertones, and they didn't have their album out yet. And we all started at the same time, the Insiders, the Supertones, and Five Iron. There was this clamoring for labels, for all these indie labels to sign the next Christian ska band, because it was all of a sudden it was the thing. No Doubt was getting airplay, and I cannot think of anyone else that was getting airplay in ska, but it was happening. Real Big Fish? It was kind of this underground. I don't think they were. I think they came maybe Less Than Jake. I think probably on the West Coast. Early Less Than Jake. No, but like it was the thing. Like Less Than Jake, I think in 97 signed to Capitol. 97, 98. So like all the majors were trying to pick up ska bands, and then so all the Christian industry was trying to follow. Right. And we had all started around the same time. So we went to Cornerstone with the promise of like 3 different labels saying, hey, you can play on our little stage. So we're like, well, cool. We get in for free, and then we can play, which, I had been the 2 years before that as a consumer. Right. I had just gone because I loved Cornerstone. And so it was cool, free ticket. Yeah. So we went, and this friend of ours was like, hey, man, I found this other ska band. come over here. Let's camp with them. So we ended up camping with the Insiders. We just pulled all our cars together and made this giant compound and met them that day in 96, met the Insiders and became like really good friends. We would be playing and these record labels were trying to figure out like which band they should sign. So they would literally have the Supertones playing with the Insiders and I think Five Iron at the same time, all three record labels, so they could see which tent got the biggest crowd.
Right.
It was crazy. So we were doing this and I think that year we ended up playing like 4 shows just like that, where we'd be like, we'd play after the Supertones or before them or during the Supertones, all 3 bands. And then we ended up all being signed. I think, like I said, the Supertones were already signed, but their album didn't come out till late summer. And then by that time we were recording and the Insiders were recording. So Joe and I we became good friends. We went on at least 2 tours together. I think 3 tours together.
Yeah.
Just good friends. Joe's a good guy. And he's really funny. And he always talk about when Five Iron and the Insiders were over, we should start a pickle and boot shop. He has a podcast. I went on it a couple times and it was really fun and funny. And he just said, hey, we should start a podcast. Let's call it the Pickle and Boot Shop. So we started doing it. And I think we've made 2. I can't remember. There's a lot of drinking while it's happening.
2 whole podcasts.
I can't remember if we made 2 or 3. I think 2.
Well, here's the thing. Are you going to play them for your mom? I mean, that's what everybody's wondering
man.
now.
So you sent me the edited version and then Joe and I had talked about censoring it. So I made another version where I made a horse whinny over me swearing. Joe doesn't swear at all. He controls his tongue, whereas I was just dropping F-bombs. I said, fuck your grandma on it twice. So I had to go in and bleep it out. So I think so far I could show it to my mom. However, I still think she would be disappointed. Like, Reese, what are you talking about? There's no format. So we'll hopefully get better at following a format or sticking with some sort of outline, but it's just so far us drinking and telling jokes.
I love it. Well, whether or not the show is real or whether you just made all this shit up, I hope that everybody will go check out and see for themselves whether or not it's real on all podcast streaming platforms. Download the Heck app and make sure to sign up for the Pickle and Boot Shop, which may or may not be a real show. But at this point, I mean, I feel like I can relate to that. There's absolutely nothing I could send my mom right now that would elicit any sort of pride in her for me as an individual.
Did she like Basic Glitches?
I think she said something. I think maybe like we were on the phone and she was like, I don't want you to think I didn't listen to that new music. And I was like, okay, what are we talking about? She was like, whatever that new album is that y'all put out. I listened to it. And I was like, okay. And she was like, well, I just wanted you to know I listened to it. I did not listen to it. I was like, okay. And then we've never talked about it again. Because it doesn't matter, like, every single thing thematically in that record, it doesn't matter how, like, happy or sad the song is. It's completely incompatible with her as a person.
It's heavy, dude. It's so heavy. But lyrically, everything. Lyrically and musically, it's by far the best thing you've ever made.
Oh, you're sweet.
It's so good.
You're sweet.
Now, for real, I texted you. I was like, dude, you should get a Grammy. I stand by that. It's so good, man. It really was the best album I heard all of last year. So good.
That is very kind of you to say. But if The Weeknd isn't going to walk away with a Grammy, I don't want one either. I mean, I'm just going and telling everybody that right now.
I would pick that album over The Weeknd. So good.
You're a sweetheart, Reese.
The Grammys, though. I mean, so the Grammys do pull some things out. Every once in a while, you'll be like, oh, this new band I heard of because of the Grammys, or they got that one right. But mostly it's just some stupid record company popularity contest. It's just, it has nothing to do with music or being groundbreaking or being like an amazing pillar of art or music.
Yeah.
You know, it's just this political kind of junior high clique thing.
It is. I feel like we kind of started to see behind that. Like, I think the first year that we were signed to Sony, they like sent us these packets because they signed us up for like a year membership for the GMA and for the, essentially all you have to do to vote for the Grammys is pay their fee every year. And so if you're a music industry person or insider or whatever, you just get them to send you the packets. You pay the $120 or whatever dollars a year it is. And then you become a part of the voting body of the Grammys.
You don't have to have any credentials
You
at all?
have to have had like a record put out on a label, I think, at the time. Like when we first got signed up for it, it was like you had to have something in your discography that was released on a legitimate label. And now, because there's so much legitimate music being made that's like clearly doing better than some of the stuff that's being released on major labels, it's like how you would even quantify somebody's authentication or to be a part of that. I don't even know anymore. I think it's a low barrier to entry, my friend. I think it's easy for anybody to be a part of.
Seems fishy.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
So if your label has a lot of money, they could just pay 100 people to be voting for Taylor Swift or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Not that Miss Swift doesn't deserve a Grammy, but
no, it's also like if you want your song played on terrestrial radio, you need to pony up about $250,000 to make that happen. And you can guarantee plays. You can't guarantee how well it will do. And it really just depends on how well connected you are in that whole sphere. It's just the same thing. And like CCM is just like a really even shittier version of that on a much smaller scale.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how we ever succeeded at anything in the Christian music industry. I don't. Like our label didn't spend any money, and we never put on the show that they wanted us to do. It was just I don't know how we made it.
I'm glad that you were a part of that. I'm glad that you were a part of that weird, fucked up subculture at that point in time, because it really was fun. It does feel like it was super fun. Even just like thinking back, like going to Cornerstone and going to places like that, like the festival circuit during the summer, even though we were like the day that we got into the Christian music industry, we were kind of over the Christian music industry. It was still like 9 years, like 9 good solid years of just like fucking fun on one level. Between friends and hotel rooms and parties and shows, and just it was cool. It was a fun time for all of the things that I say bad about it all the time.
Well, and like what I wouldn't give to play Cornerstone again,
right?
Just or any of those festivals, just to be like, there's 30,000 people here, and like they may or may not care about your band, but there's 30,000 people and this is fun.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to be like, they may or may not care about your band, but they definitely would flip their shit over 5 Iron Frenzy. I'll tell you that much.
Now, dude, I saw you play a couple of those festivals and you kicked ass.
I know we did. I'm not worried about it.
Ass. Like, for real, I remember seeing you at Soulfest the first time, and I had never heard your band. Like, 5 Iron broke up, I was out of the game for a bit, and then I got to host the stage, and then I was just like, who the fuck is this band? Like, this band is so good. Yeah. The kids loved you. Every time I saw you, they were going ape shit.
You're cool. We had a good little first meeting there. I feel like Soulfest was the first time that we met each other.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I feel like John Rubin might have been in that mix somewhere.
Maybe
he's coming on the show in a couple of weeks.
That's good. He is good people.
To kind of do his whole deconstructionist thing too.
Okay.
We're gonna put together a sizzler reel of
deconstruction.
2000s Christian pop rock artists talking about how they don't believe anything anymore and how it's all a bunch of horseshit.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's a joke. Yeah, are you getting nervous? You're doing nervous habit things over there.
I'm always nervous on podcasts.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is also the problem is we don't play shows. Haven't played shows in a year, and I've been at home by myself in my studio here. I don't talk to people.
So you just get weird.
So I'm just like, how the hell does this happen? How do you talk to people? I can't remember vocabulary words. I'll be like, the word for this is, well, you know, Matthew, it is
Copulate.
this. Copulate is the word I was looking for.
That's awesome.
I keep saying fuck, but I meant something else.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Also, I am getting nervous, and I have this giant mouse pad I ordered that takes up like a lot of the desk.
It looks like you've got a lot of dandruff
pads,
on it now. You're cleaning the dandruff.
Yeah, man, they get nasty. Yeah. Like you just see this, and then you're afraid people are going to see it and be like, "That guy's nasty."
Yeah.
Instead of like, "Oh yeah, that's what a mouse pad looks like after a while." That's what they all do. Yeah. But I feel like I'm nasty.
Every single one. Well, dude, we've gone the time. I'm going to let you get back to your life as a pro audio dealership owner, ska band, voice box, and job hunter.
Job hunter. Job humper is what I like to tell the people in interviews.
That's it.
Like, I haven't been hunting for this job. I've been humping for it.
Catch what I mean? Yeah, that's amazing.
Do you catch what I mean, ladies?
Well, Reese, it's been really fun. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this and make sex jokes and talk about your shit.
Thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, we'll do it again soon.
Yeah. All right, man. I'll see you soon.